Hello and welcome to Trekkie Tuesdays. This episode is Return to Tomorrow.
I feel like it was much more sci-fi and less like social commentary, maybe. Like pretty straightforward sci-fi and very like different choices. Like I'm curious if there's some sort of like backstory behind like directors and writers, and some Trekkie should write in and tell us more about it, because we're just sort of, not as well researched, or maybe Aaron will pop in with something. But I mean, I felt like this was a pretty different toned episode. There was a lot more like, we are going to do this for the future in Star Trek, and like Kirk was having a dramatic moment and McCoy was doing the hand motions, and Kirk was just saying, I could see why you would think that, but the future! And we were like, oh, okay, the future! Okay, put that alien in your body and make out, I guess. Future.
There are some stylistic differences. I think it's melodrama is the word for this.
Maybe. None of the like good technological stuff that Kirk was hoping for seemed to occur that I could tell. There were some nice moments where Spock was smiling because his body was inhabited by somebody who smiles. And that's always fun to see Spock smile, because you're like, oh, Leonard Nimoy, you're so great. I never see you smile. McCoy was right because of his intuition and no facts. Although, like, he could have used facts, but he didn't need it. I don't know. It was sort of weird. I don't know what the message was. There was a lot of, like, aliens inhabiting the crew's body so that they could make out / create a new robot version of themselves that nobody was too excited by. I don't know. What, like, notable, interesting moments were, like, the idea that perhaps humans are actually just remnants of a past alien species that, like, has gone through their whole cycle, and of, like, building really cool technology, and then really cool technology being their demise. And they just happen to be scattered across the universe and became our own Adam and Eve. And I feel like that's something that has come up recently in Cosmos, that people were like, whoa, cool. And hey, it happened first on Star Trek, or probably not first, but it did happen on Star Trek in the 60s, so there you go. And other neat ideas, like the idea that just the concept that there will be our next thing, like, that we'll have to deal with. And so Kirk is saying, well, we got past the nuclear age, like, no big deal, alien, like, you managed to destroy yourselves, but not us. And he's like, of course we got past that, like, it's the other stuff. And and Kirk is like, oh, what other stuff? But we don't know. And probably something to do with their brains being able to kind of like float in the atmosphere or something. It was sort of unclear what the rules of that were, but it is sort of space in the future, so I guess we'll allow that. And like, that is sort of interesting. It's something that Aaron and I talk about, is like, will there be a day where we can live forever, where we'll be able to like upload our brains into robots or computers or virtual interspaces, and who knows how much you think we're nuts for that, but maybe we won't survive that, and that's also something that we talk about. So it was kind of cool to see it here, but I don't know, it was an okay episode, I guess. There were some like real questionable things, but I don't know, maybe in the future those things are not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know if I would agree to let an alien just like inhabit my body for a final kiss. I mean, maybe I would. I don't know. It's just a little weird. But maybe if you didn't have a memory of it, I don't know. I was sort of surprised to see that on network television, I guess. And what other, like, some Nurse Chapel featured in this episode a fair bit. Tend to like Nurse Chapel. Like, she always is struggling with men in this, like, interesting way that, like, seems a little bit more explicit than, like, say, how Uhura interacts with men, which is sort of, you know, makes you wonder, like, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it makes me feel like, like, maybe there's some white lady feminism and lack of intersectionality here or something. Or, you know, maybe just white women on the show get more, like, talking time than non-white women. I don't know. She does at first get duped, but then sort of saves the day, but only because Spock was also in her brain at the same time, which was, like, kind of creepy and weird given their, like, tensions. There's a lot of Spock, Nurse Chapel tensions during this whole episode, so if you're, like, into that bromance, you know, this is the one for you.
Yeah, it is interesting how much that's getting played up. I'm kind of surprised by it, given that in the reboot, it's all about Spock and Uhura, and there's a throwaway line about how Chapel had a thing briefly with Kirk, and then left.
Really, though, if you're watching the original series, I think it would be the opposite. It would be Uhura and Kirk, and Spock and Chapel seem to be
for sure
the couples,
the head couples. Anyway,
this couple in that.
That's wonderful. Okay. That's what that polka head symbol actually means. Live long and prosper as distinct couples.
Really?
No. Just riffing.
Sad.
It might mean infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That is a thing that Vulcans talk about.
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations? Why would this mean that?
Because it's like two combinations of things. I don't know. It's not.
No, then you would be like, do. Yeah. That would be like infinite. Yeah. You can't do it. I can do it.
It's just a thing that Leonard Nimoy made up that he saw his rabbi do once.
His rabbi did it?
Yeah.
That's funny. Why?
I think it actually comes from, like, a Catholic benediction. I think the rabbi picked it up from Christians.
It just gets Google this for us and then type in.
Well, this episode does a good job of showcasing the problem with the idea of men as the default gender and how that ends up shortchanging women. If being male isn't a character trait, but being female is a character trait, then women have one fewer actual character trait that they bother to establish on the show. So, you know, like when we see the three people preparing to beam down, we have an establishing character moment with them saying a line for each of the men, and then the woman just comes on and romantic music plays, which is maybe demonstrated the most blatantly when they've been making this supposedly sexless android body that either the male alien or the female alien could eventually inhabit and then mod, except it's got an Adam's apple and, like, a man's jaw, and, you know, you make the woman from the man, like Adam and Eve.
And, like, even when they wake up, like, the woman wakes up, like, I don't know, you just have to watch them when they all first inhabit the bodies, because, like, all the men are like, I am awake, I feel so good, and, like, the woman is like, I have a face.
Yeah, frustrating ending. They get rid of the bad alien and then decide that because they have the capacity for evil, they must immediately kill themselves without doing any of the good they've been planning on doing. They not know already that they have the capacity for evil? You know, that they destroy their own civilization?
Go back into the sphery ball things on that planet and just wait for some other creatures to find them? I mean, like, what's the harm in just waiting, like, a long time?
Yeah, I didn't get where any of the names were coming from except Sargon. So Sargon is interesting. and made me think that that was going to be the person who betrayed people. So Sargon was an ancient king of Acadia. So the earliest civilizations that we have records of in Mesopotamia, and he seems to have started off as a cupbearer, as a servant or slave, and then assassinated the king somehow and taken his place, and then proceeded to conquer everything around him so that, as far as he knew, he ruled the entire world, like all of human civilization. And part of the reason we think that he used some skullduggery to get to his throne is that Sargon literally means, in Akkadian, the king is legitimate. Which, why would you call yourself that unless the king was not legitimate? But also we have like fragments of a legend where Inanna comes to him and says, "You should assassinate the king. It's the right thing to do," or something like that. And so I don't think they meant to like have that be a red herring or anything. I think maybe all it's supposed to evoke, if it had any intentionality, was the legitimate king. And Sargon really is the closest we come, I think, to having the Judeo-Christian God appear in this show. He calls everybody his children. He's completely benevolent and, in the end, self-sacrificing. He had a plan all along, which did remind me of my first referent for Sargon, which is the chess-playing AI that Dad and I, it was our mutual nemesis as I grew up. Like, this was back when, in theory, humans were still better than computers at chess, but we were not better than Sargon. We had one predictable opening that could predictably cause Sargon to make the same mistake, so every so often we would just play that game, just to go, ha! But, it seems like all Sargons are very good chess players, is the moral of the story. Tune in next week for Patterns of Force. Boop, beep, boop, boop, boop.